Let's cultivate our motivation. So as Shantideva spends a good part of engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds, telling us bodhicitta is the unique cause for full awakening, and it's essential to attain the highest awakening. So to have bodhicitta in our mind, we need to have practice and cultivated it through one of the two methods, either the 7 cause and effect instructions or equalizing and exchanging self and others. And as a prelude to those two methods for cultivating bodhicitta, we have to cultivate equanimity, which means freeing our mind from attachment to dear ones, aversion to others, and apathy towards strangers. So this is, developing equanimity is really a first step that we have to spend a lot of time on, because our minds are not very equanimous towards other sentient beings. We play favorites, we cherish some more than others, and we can also be very biased and prejudiced towards certain individuals because of a small incident that happened with them, or be biased and prejudiced against whole groups of people because of what we have heard from our family or society or whatever. So it's important in our lives to really look at the bias, the prejudice, and see what reasons we give ourselves for preferring some people over others, or thinking better of some people than we do of others. So examining where those thoughts come from, looking closely at how they uphold our ego, our sense of I, because I am this, I am not that. I am with this group, I am not with that group. And then beginning to see how these are all the lack of equanimity, all the bias and prejudice, whether on a social level or a personal level, is all due to distorted conceptions. And then to uproot those distorted conceptions, first by seeing how they are distorted. So this takes a lot of work on our part over time, because sometimes these things are hard to recognize. And also when we go to overcome the bias, attachment, and anger, it can really threaten our own sense of self. And So to begin to release that self-grasping as well. So with this in mind, let's listen to how Shantideva is going to tell us how to do this. And cultivate that bodhicitta mind, even though it's fabricated at the moment, still cultivate it again and again, familiarize the mind with it, and seek full awakening in order to benefit all beings. So usually when they teach about equanimity, the usual presentation is friends, enemies, and strangers. Well, usually just friends and enemies. Yeah. In Lamrim Chenmo, it just talks about equalizing between friends and enemies. I think it's very helpful to have strangers in there too, because unless we recognize strangers as living beings who have feelings, then, we're still going to have bias against them. So usually we approach this meditation on a personal level to look at who we consider dear ones in our own personal life, who we consider enemies because they abused us, they harmed us, they criticized us, or whatever. And then whoever we consider strangers because in our personal life we don't know them. But this meditation also applies, I think, on a social level. Yeah. So how we look at different groups of people, and especially now, since this is really coming up in light of George Floyd's murder, what they call structural racism or implicit bias, all of this is actually related to the equanimity meditation. When you think about it, it is, isn't it? Yeah, because it all involves partiality based on, who I think is in my group and who is in others' group, and who benefits me and who doesn't benefit me. Okay, who I consider like me, fully human, and who I consider not like me, And this also includes how we relate to animals, not just other human beings, but how sometimes, people think nothing now that, the farmers can't get their animals to the towns and cities. They can't get the meat there, so now they're just slaughtering animals and burying them, and that, for many people that seems perfectly okay, because somehow the animals, they think don't have feelings, don't want happiness, don't want suffering, and do want happiness. Okay, so when we really look at this equanimity meditation, it can apply to a lot of different areas of our life. Yeah, so maybe I'll leave it with that. I've been getting criticized a lot for talking about politics in Dharma talks. But for me, talking about equanimity like this, as it applies to racism or animal mistreatment, to me, that is not political, it is ethical. However, when I say things that disagree with other people's opinions, or that they don't, they criticize, or if they think that these issues are not related to Dharma, that somehow Dharma is over here, and, you go towards enlightenment, and all these social problems are over here. And as religious people, war, racism, climate, environmental destruction, climate change, all these things are politics. And as monastics, we should somehow be floating on that cloud, drifting up towards Amitabha's Pure Land and awakening, and not muddy our feet or our speech by talking about things that pertain to social issues. However, I disagree with that approach. As a child, so much I saw religious people, being religious on Sunday, but not able to apply the principles they learned in their daily life or how they related to social issues. And so in my Buddhist practice, I feel it's very important to broaden, how the Dharma is taught so it relates to all aspects of my life. Okay, so some people like it and praise, and some people criticize. What to do? But I remember several years ago in the Zen community, people were really shaken to find out that many of the very respected roshis had supported the Japanese imperial regime during World War II and thought that Japanese imperialism throughout Asia was fine. Okay? And they were saying, how could people who had Dharma realizations have that kind of view? Because if you know anything about what the Japanese army did when it occupied Asian countries all up and down the coast, it was horrific. Horrific. I talked to one woman who, as a child, lived in Malaysia, and she was telling me how people were eviscerated just in front of her eyes. And so anyway, we can go on and on. But my point here is they were so surprised. How could there be that difference? If you have realizations, how come it doesn't spill over to look at one's political views? Yeah. So I can't answer that. I cannot say what was going on in the minds of some of these roshis, because I don't know my own mind well enough, let alone to comment on the minds and realizations of other practitioners. But I can say that seeing that made me realize that in my practice, I need to apply the Dharma to all aspects of my life. Yeah, whether it's healthcare, whether it's, anything, what I do when I clean the bathroom, looking out for bugs, taking bugs out, all these kinds of things. I think our practice has to apply very broadly, very widely. So, and bodhicitta is, really the thing, as we all heard last week, His Holiness talk about the values of bodhicitta, the importance of bodhicitta. Yeah. And as I showed in the introductory meditation, to have bodhicitta, we really have to go back and look at equanimity. Okay. Right now in the text, we're in chapter 1, and we're on the section where Shantideva is talking about the benefits of bodhicitta. So we've already covered about precious human life and the opportunity it affords us to generate bodhicitta. And now we're getting Buddhist propaganda, the value of bodhicitta, except this is propaganda that is true and beneficial, not incorrect propaganda. Okay. So last week we talked a little bit about how bodhicitta is so powerful in destroying great negativity, and thinking, why is it so powerful? Because when you compare bodhicitta to any other kind of virtuous mind, it excels beyond all other virtuous minds, okay? Because it's concerned with the Dharma welfare of all sentient beings in the long term, forever, doesn't give up on sentient beings, and wants for them the highest happiness. So a mind like that, just in terms of what it does, you can't excel that. And so it's so virtuous that it's got to be that thing that destroys great negativity. So that was verse 6. Verse 7, it also makes supreme happiness a reality. Okay, and when you think about, when we meet people who have love and compassion, and maybe bodhicitta, we know how good we feel around them. But also to look at it from the viewpoint of the person who has bodhicitta and how happy that person is all the time. Yeah, because when you have bodhicitta, you don't fall into rage or despair or resentment or discouragement or anything like that. Yeah. And your mind is very optimistic and goes forward without having unrealistic expectations. And so we're able to take things in stride instead of having unrealistic expectations and then falling into disappointment and despair when they aren't actualized. Okay, so this is a very important thing. Yesterday, when we were listening to the panel discussion with President Obama on it, and you remember how he was reminding the young activists, he praised them for all their enthusiasm, but then he reminded them that this is going to take a long time. It's not going to be our lifetime. It's going to take long time. It's going to take repetition, And the same thing with developing any good quality. But if you have that long-term vision, then you don't get discouraged while you're going there because you're not expecting to change the world by next Wednesday. Okay, you're knowing that changing people's minds is more difficult than changing the material world. Isn't that interesting? We can move a mountain physically. It's hard, but you get enough, what do you call them? Earth movers there, and you can move the mountain. But to change sentient beings' minds, even our own mind, That's hard, isn't it? Yeah. Mountains give when the earth mover pushes against them. Our mind digs in its heels and says, "Nyeh," when pushed. Okay? So, but you can see, the giving up on realistic expectations, either of ourselves or of others, actually enables us to continue working towards our goal and eventually achieve it. Whereas if we have and hold on to unrealistic expectations, when they aren't fulfilled, we get depressed. And then we throw in the towel and say, forget it. Okay, if we do that, then for sure we're never gonna, be able to develop the qualities we want to develop or achieve even the social aims we want to achieve. Okay. So bodhicitta makes the mind perpetually optimistic and happy in that way, and enables us to keep going forward. Mm-hmm. So very important. Then that was verse 7. Verse 8 talks about how it can accomplish our wishes. So verse 8, okay, in this translation reads, "Those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of their conditioned existence, those who wish all beings to experience a multitude of joys, and those who wish to experience much happiness should never forsake bodhicitta." Okay, so here is what bodhicitta is going to do for you. Okay, here's the hardcore advertising for bodhicitta. If you get it, this is what it's going to do. Yeah, so those who wish to destroy the many sorrows of conditioned existence, people who are fed up with samsara, who are fed up about getting born and reborn again and again under the influence of afflictions and karma. People who are fed up with the three kinds of dukkha, the dukkha of pain, the dukkha of change, and pervasive conditioned dukkha. Okay, people who are fed up with birth, aging, sickness, death, not getting what you want, getting what you don't want, yeah, being separated from what you like, and just having a body under the influence of afflictions and karma, body and mind under their influence. So people who are tired of all of that, yeah, bodhicitta will help you destroy the causes for that kind of life. Okay? Okay. Those who wish all beings to experience a multitude of joys. So everybody who really in their heart believes and feels what they write on Christmas cards, this is what you should practice. Yeah? Because what do people write on Christmas cards? May everybody live in peace. May everybody have happiness. May everybody have what they need, and be free of suffering and have all happiness. So if you really believe that in your heart, then bodhicitta will help you make it real. Okay. If you don't believe it in your heart, then don't bother sending the Christmas cards. Isn't it? Yeah? I mean, why do we send Christmas cards? Do we mean what we say when we send them? Or are we only sending them out of social obligation? Okay, and then the third one is those who wish to experience much happiness. So even if we want to experience happiness ourselves, bodhicitta is what enables us to have happiness. So like His Holiness always tells us that when he is compassionate towards somebody else, he benefits more than the person he's compassionate towards, because bodhicitta, great compassion, makes one's own mind so happy because we feel like our life is becoming meaningful. And I think what most of us really want in our life is meaning, isn't it? Don't we want meaning more than chocolate? Yeah. Again, by chocolate, you can, whatever it is that you like, you know. So bodhicitta can give this all to us. So think about it and, develop the aspiration to cultivate bodhicitta. Then verse 9, when we generate bodhicitta, we become special in name and in meaning. Okay, so verse 9 reads, the moment bodhicitta arises in those fettered and weak in the jail of cyclic existence, they will be named a child of the Sugatas and will be revered by both humans and gods of the world. Okay, so the moment bodhicitta arises in the mind, even in the mind of somebody who is weak, who is floundering in samsara, who is overwhelmed by samsaric dukkha, if bodhicitta arises in the mind of somebody like that, then they become known as the Sugata's children. Or I was explaining the other time, another translation is the Sugatas or the conqueror's heirs, in the sense that if you're born into a royal family, you will automatically inherit the throne. So if you generate bodhicitta, you will automatically, you're on the bodhisattva path and will attain full awakening. Okay, so it's kind of like being a child who takes over the work of their parent. Yeah, you're in that lineage and you go for it. Okay, so even somebody who, is just completely overwhelmed by misery, if they generate bodhicitta, then they become a bodhisattva, an heir of the Sugatas. Sugatas means those gone to bliss. Okay, and they will be revered by humans and gods of the world. Okay, so we, of course, I don't think we're all looking for reputation, like, I've generated bodhicitta, now everybody's going to respect me, especially the gods of the world, and I'm going to have a really good reputation now. I don't think it's that, but it's, if we look at the people who have upper rebirth, human beings, the celestial beings, and then think that these are beings, who have an upper rebirth, whose ideas matter, and so if they give the stamp of approval, then it's worth something. Okay, and so if the gods of the world, if human beings who are really knowledgeable and well respected, respect the bodhicitta and then respect us because we've generated that precious mind, then it lets us know that we're on the right track. If people who are wise in the world approve of what we're doing, that's good feedback. We know we're on the right track. When people who are not wise, who commit a lot of negativity, approve of what we're doing, then we need to check up what we're doing. Because we may be involved in making big messes in the world. Okay, so that's verse 9. Then verse 10 gets into giving a lot of examples. There's a whole series of verses now that follow, giving examples of how bodhicitta functions, okay? So these similes, can be very enriching and gladdening to the mind when you contemplate them. And they also have meaning. Okay, so verse 10. So it, meaning bodhicitta, it is like the supreme gold-making elixir, for it transforms the unclean body we have taken into the priceless jewel of a Buddha form. Therefore, firmly seize this awakening mind, firmly seize bodhicitta. Okay, so there's some kind of elixir, that can transform 1,000 units of iron into gold. Yeah, so I think the Federal Reserve wants to meet and have this elixir, even though we're off the gold standard now. But, people say, oh, you can transform iron into gold. Whoa. Something that is, because iron's usually kind of grungy looking. It's very useful, but it's grungy looking and it's dirty. And to transform it into gold, which, is valued so highly, that says something. So here the verse is saying that the mind of bodhicitta takes our impure body, our body that was taken under the influence of karma and afflictions, and it changes that into the priceless body of a Buddha. Okay, so this doesn't mean that this thing will all of a sudden become a Buddha body that's made of light. Okay, this thing actually, the flesh and blood body gets dissolved into emptiness. And then the mind that realizes emptiness manifests as the Buddha's form. Okay, so it's not that the physical continuity of this body becomes the Buddha's body. This body is not a substantial cause of the enjoyment body or the emanation body. Okay, but they use the word transform, okay, in the sense that we start out with this body, we practice bodhicitta with a mind that is in this body. Okay, so we have our precious human life. We use it in a beneficial way, even though we're in an impure body. And by doing that and purifying the mind, then we can take a body that is stainless, that is not defiled in any way, that is made of the light that comes from the wisdom mind. Okay. So it's encouraging us to, when it says take hold of bodhicitta, it means really, make that something big in your mind so that, your mind holds it. I mean, if you had elixir that changed iron into gold, you would go like this. So it means, cherish, precious, see it that way. Okay, then, so that's verse 10. Verse 11, there's another simile here regarding the rarity and preciousness of bodhicitta. So here we have, since the limitless mind of the sole guide of the world has, upon thorough investigation, seen its preciousness, all beings wishing to be free from the worldly abodes should firmly take hold of this precious bodhicitta. Okay, so the sole guide of the world refers to the Buddha. The Buddha has many epithets. So the Buddha is the sole guide, any Buddha who can lead us from where we are to full awakening without any detours or errors or anything like that. Okay, so the limitless mind of that Buddha, through investigation, not through blind belief, but through investigation, sees the preciousness of bodhicitta. Okay, why is bodhicitta precious? Because of what was explained in the verses starting with verse number 6. Okay, so through that kind of investigation and contemplation, the Buddha has seen the value of bodhicitta, and is willing to teach us the method to generate it. So all beings wishing to be free from worldly abodes, where we're subject to birth, aging, sickness, and death under the influence of afflictions and karma, all of us, in that particular state, should firmly take hold of the bodhicitta, should really practice it and try and generate it in our mind, because that is what will free us from the state that we're in. Okay, so it's very important continually to think about the state that we're in, because we so often just have the feeling of, this is my life. Yeah, this is my life. I am this kind of being. There's all these sufferings that are caused by external factors, and this suffering shouldn't be here, and we should be able to have heaven on earth and make everybody get along and stop all age, birth, aging, sickness, and death. Yeah, with our human intelligence, that should be sufficient to stop birth. Well, we don't mind birth, but aging, sickness, and death. But the problem is, as soon as you're born, you're going towards aging, sickness, and death. So they all go together. We can't really separate birth out. But so often we just have a certain view of our life, and we don't have the thought, I am a transmigrator in samsara. Yeah, when you wake up in the morning, do you think, I'm a transmigrator in samsara? Yeah. Do you think I was born under the due to afflictions and karma, and I'm aging and dying under the control of afflictions and karma? Do you think that? Yeah. When you look around at everything going around in the world, do you think this whole world is comes about due to afflictions and karma? That this whole world is based on ignorance? I don't know about you, but those thoughts don't automatically occur to my mind. Instead, I wake up and I am so-and-so, and this is what I'm going to do today, and I hope to have this kind of happiness and avoid this kind of suffering. And I have my expectations for how things are going to go today, and everything should be as I expect it to be. I should be perfectly secure. There should be no changes that come about without my permission and knowledge beforehand. Including natural disasters. I should be prepared for them and know about them before they happen. And, if somebody's going to criticize me, I should know about it beforehand so I can write it in my journal and prepare. Yeah. I mean, the way we look at ourselves, when you compare it to what samsara is, we're really kind of in outer space, aren't we? Yeah. So, yeah. So really coming back and really saying, what does it mean to be a sentient being born in samsara? What does that really mean? And how is it that that is my situation? And how is it that every single living being around me, whether I like them or don't like them, whether I agree with their politics or disagree with their politics, we're all under the influence of ignorance, afflictions, and karma. Yeah. How often do I really put that in my mind and then generate the wish for all of us to be free from this horrific state we're in, and to generate, the determination to become a fully awakened Buddha to make that happen. Okay, so bodhicitta is the thing that enables us to make that switch so that we can see what our life is all about, what our situation is, what our amazing human potential is. Bodhicitta enables us to see all of that and to have a much more realistic view of our present situation as well as our potential. Okay. And to really see, generating bodhicitta is rare and precious. Yeah. Because when you're little kids, you're born in this body. Yeah. And from the very get-go, that society and your parents have imagined the best future they can for you. Yeah. Because they want all of us to have what they didn't have. So what aspirations do our parents have for us? We get a good education so we can get a good job, so we can have financial security plus extra money to have a good time, so that we can have a good family life and give them grandchildren, so we can have a good reputation and make them proud of us. Yeah. Do they ever look at us and say, I want you to become a Buddha? Yeah. You have the potential to develop impartial love and compassion for all beings. And that's what I want you to do with your life. And I will support you so you can do that. Yeah. Our parents love their kids so much. Do they wish this for us? No, they don't even know what it is. Yeah. So it's quite rare and precious to, meet a situation and meet people that see that we have that kind of potential and encourage us in that way. Yeah. Especially when nearly the rest of the world is saying, what in the world are you doing? Yeah, why don't you go get a job and be useful? Have you heard that one? Or you got such a good education, how can you throw it away and just watch your belly button all the time? Okay. So bodhicitta, it's precious, and our opportunity to generate it is as well. Okay, so that's verse 11. Verse 12. All other virtues are like plantain trees, for after bearing fruit, they simply perish. Yet the perennial tree of bodhicitta unceasingly bears fruit and thereby flourishes without end. Beautiful verse, okay? So plantains it's a kind of banana. Yeah, for those of you who don't know, they're stouter and thicker, and very often they're fried and served like a vegetable. Anyway, so you know how one thing can be used as an analogy meaning different things in different contexts? So plantain tree, usually when we hear about plantain trees, it's they're compared to how phenomena are devoid of inherent existence. Okay, because plantain trees, the way they grow, they have, I looked it up on Google, they have one kind of long root or something. They have all these biological terms. I don't know. If you know them, please tell me.
Rhizomatous.
That sounds like it. Yeah. So what she said. Rhizomatous. Yeah. So it grows in the dirt like this, and then different sprouts come up. Yeah. And the way the sprouts come up is they come up, they're like leaves, natural leaves, and they come up and they curl around each other. So all these leaves curling around each other gives the appearance of the trunk of a tree. And then off the trunk of the tree, you get branches, and the plantains grow on that. Okay. The reason it's usually used as an example for emptiness is because it looks like a trunk in the same way that phenomena look solid and real, like they have an actual core, a real essence. But the plantain tree, when you cut it, there's no core, there's no essence. It was totally a false appearance. Yeah, so in the same way, phenomena lack an inherently existent essence or core. So that's how it usually is. Here, it has a different meaning. Okay, so this I didn't know about plantain trees. Did you know about them? That after they bear fruit, they die? I didn't. Yeah, I didn't know that either. So I don't know how many fruit they have to bear before they die. Okay, so all other virtues, similar to the plantain tree, after they're exhausted, I assume exhausted means die, but somehow they're cut back, their energy is cut back upon bearing fruit. Yeah. But bodhicitta, the fruit of bodhicitta, never gets exhausted. It only gets increased. So what this is meaning is that with the motivation to attain the highest awakening, to benefit all the sentient beings and to lead them to the highest awakening, because of the magnitude of that kind of aspiration, when we do an action with that motivation and dedicate the merit created by the action according to that motivation, in other words, for the awakening of ourself and others, when we dedicate for that highest thing, then the good karma we create, the virtue we create, never gets exhausted until we attain full awakening. Okay? Whereas if we create virtue without that motivation, with, let's say, the motivation, I'm going to be generous this life so that I'll have resources and a financial security in the next life. If we create a virtuous action with that kind of motivation, it will bring us wealth in the next life. But then that virtue gets exhausted. Okay, it was created with a certain motivation. It achieved that motivation, and then it's over. The energy's consumed, it ripened. But with bodhicitta, because what we're aiming for is so long-term and so magnificent, the virtue never gets exhausted until we attain awakening. And all those other things that we need along the way in order to achieve highest awakening, those things come as a byproduct of the virtue created with the motivation of bodhicitta and dedicated for full awakening. Okay? You understanding that? So, it's because you're going here. So the virtue is dedicated for that. So you have a good rebirth. You'll have the physical necessities that you need to practice. You'll meet teachers. You'll be born in a time when the Buddha has taught and the teachings, the lineage of teachings exist. You'll have benefactors and so on and so forth, okay? So that's what it means. That's how powerful bodhicitta is. Whereas if we motivate and dedicate for anything less than that, then the virtue will ripen for that lesser aim, and then it's finished. Okay. Now, there's something to clarify here, because a lot of us, maybe you people didn't, but a lot of us at the beginning heard this verse and thought that merit created with bodhicitta and dedicated for awakening can never be destroyed. Okay, that is not the case. Okay, the merit can be destroyed by generating wrong views or by anger. Yeah, so when you're in the process of getting angry at somebody, ask yourself if destroying your merit is really worth the luxury of getting angry. Or if you're going to be better off tamping down on the anger. So unless the merit's destroyed by anger or wrong views, it won't get exhausted until it ripens in awakening. But we still have to be careful because it can be destroyed. Okay, that's verse 12. Verse 13. So here it's a simile for the ability to rescue us from great danger. Okay, so 13 says, like entrusting myself to a brave person when greatly afraid, by entrusting myself to this bodhicitta, I shall be swiftly liberated, even if I have committed extremely unbearable wrongs. Why then do the conscientious not devote themselves to this? Okay, so usually when we're in a dangerous situation, we look for somebody else to protect us, and if we can get some big, strong person or, at least somebody who's bigger than us to protect us, we run behind them, okay? We take refuge in them. Here, what this verse is talking about is taking refuge in bodhicitta, okay? In other words, when we're afraid, when we feel insecure, when everything seems to be crashing down around us, okay, take refuge in bodhicitta, generate bodhicitta, okay, because bodhicitta, is so strong that, as we learned in a previous verse, it will help us purify all sorts of negativities that we've created before, even the 10 destructive actions. Yeah, so it's very powerful in purifying negative actions from the past. So, when we're afraid, when we're worried about some negative karma ripening, or we feel uncertain, generate bodhicitta. Yeah. It'll help purify negativities. It also helps calm the mind. Yeah. Because when you're, feeling really insecure and you don't know what's going to happen to you, what's going on in our mind? Okay. Lots of self-grasping, lots of self-centeredness. And we're falling into a panic and despair, and everything's confusing and we don't know what to do because self-grasping and self-centeredness have taken over the mind and hijacked it, into panic and fear and confusion and everything else. If we stop that, if we recognize, that there's danger of self-grasping and self-centeredness to arise, and we immediately pull the plug on it and turn the mind towards bodhicitta, then the mind's not going to fall into that totally confused, freaked out state. Yeah. The mind will be able to be calm and see things clearly, because we're not going to be just going, me, I, my, what's happening to me? This is terrible, blah, 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 blah. Because the mind will be focused on other living beings. The mind will be focused on full awakening. The mind will be focused on the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha as our role model and as who we can become like. Yeah. So the mind will be calm and it'll have direction. Okay. Just a few days ago, I got an email from Kenru. Some of you may remember him. He's been to the Abbey before, and he's when we go to Singapore and Malaysia, he's always there and taking teachings and being very active. And in fact, he has a huge family, and every time we're there, they do a Sangha Dana. The whole family, like 20, 30 people come and offer Sangha. And he's the one who activates them to do that. So when I say help your relatives while they're still alive, this is what he does, and how much he helps his family. So I got an email from him, and he recently had an operation. There was a cyst pressing against his spine, and it was infected. And, he was going to have general anesthesia. Okay. So he thought about bodhicitta, and he did the taking and giving meditation, right up until the point when he went under. And, he said at first he was really kind of nervous about the surgery. And then he remembered, practice bodhicitta, practice Tonglen. He did that, and he said because he had to wait like an hour in the holding area before the surgery, before they put him under. I mean, an hour, what a time for anxiety, But he said his mind was so calm. He was telling jokes to the staff. He was smiling at everybody, probably the opposite of everybody else who's about to undergo the knife, So he was thinking like that. They did the general anesthesia. And he said when he woke up, he was chanting the metta meditation in Pali, and so when he realized that's what was going on in his mind, he sat up in bed, and he didn't feel any effect of the anesthesia. He sat up in bed and meditated on metta for about a half an hour after coming out of surgery. Okay, so this is a good example of taking refuge in bodhicitta. Instead of, the mind getting freaked out and afraid, you switch it in that way. Yeah. Okay. So that's verse 13. Verse 14. The first two lines of verse 14 are an example of how it destroys negativity effortlessly. Okay, so just like the fire at the end of an age, it instantly consumes all great wrongdoing. Okay, so this again is coming back to that theme we talked about before, is the incredible power of bodhicitta to destroy negativities. Yeah, and here the simile is the fire at the end of the eon. You know, they talk about different kinds of eons, and in ancient Indian cosmology of creation, abiding, destruction, and then an empty eon. And in the eon of destruction, there's many different ways the world can be destroyed according to the four elements. Okay, so earth, water, fire, and air. So I think our eon is supposed to be destroyed by fire, but I don't know when that's going to happen. So I don't worry about it very much. Yeah, but the idea is, just as fire burns something quickly and forcefully, bodhicitta can burn the seeds of destructive karma very quickly and forcefully, especially the karma that would cause us to be born in an unfortunate rebirth. Yeah, and that kind of karma is really bad, because if we fall into a lower rebirth, it's very difficult to get out. First of all, because it's difficult to create virtuous karma when born in an unfortunate realm. And second of all, at the moment of death, it's difficult to have a virtuous thought when you're dying in an unfortunate realm. And that having a virtuous thought at the time of death is really important for making a seed of virtuous karma ripen. Okay. So, so it has this great power to eliminate different kinds of karma. Okay, then the last two lines talk about the benefits explained in the sutra. So it says, its unfathomable advantages were taught to the disciple Sudana by the wise Lord Maitreya. So in the Avatamsaka Sutra, it's composed of many different sutras, and I think the last one is called the Gandavyuha Sutra. And that tells the story of the youth Sudana, who wants to attain awakening, and he goes to 53 different teachers, starting with one who teaches him everything he knows, and then when he's mastered that teacher sends him on to another teacher, who sends him on to another and another and another. And I think the last one is Samantabhadra, or maybe it's Maitreya. But this is the sutra where the King of Prayers comes from. Okay? So it's very beautiful. When we were in Taiwan a few years ago, they took us on a tour of some temples outside of Kaohsiung. So there was one nun, and she was the abbess of one temple that they were just building. And in the hall, it was an enormous hall, but one whole wall of the hall was a relief telling the story of Sudana going to all these different teachers. You know? And that, I just stared at that wall for the longest time. I don't know. There was something very powerful about it. They were still making it. It wasn't finished yet. So I'd like to go back sometime when it's finished. But it's amazing. And Venerable Hengshur has a way of telling the story about Sudana that's really beautiful. And tried to get the slides and the text and everything from him, but I couldn't. So sometime we'll have to ask him to come here and give the presentation himself. He does it really in a quite beautiful way. Okay, so here's, so the Array of Stalks Sutra. I think that's how they translate the Gandavyuha, but I'm not sure. Anyway, so here's one quote from it. Child of a good family, or heir of a good family, bodhicitta is like the seed of all awakened dharmas. It is like a field because it increases the white dharmas, the virtuous dharmas of all migrators. It is like the pure vase because it perfectly accomplishes all thoughts. It is like a spear because it causes the downfall of the enemy of the afflictions. So we can understand the spear one. I don't know the pure vase. There must be some. Oh, the wish-fulfilling vase in the mandala offering. It must refer to that. Yeah. So this is talking about the benefits of bodhicitta. Then the next page just says, from the ornaments of clear realization, mind generation desires perfectly completed enlightenment for the welfare of others. And the rest of the page is blank. But I think we have the meaning of that verse. Okay. So, this is a good point, space to pause. Questions or comments?
Is it the realization of bodhicitta that would bring about the destruction of previously committed negativities?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's a ways off.
You have to actually generate bodhicitta, uncontrived bodhicitta. But to get to uncontrived bodhicitta, you have to start with contrived bodhicitta. Okay? So sometimes people, say, oh, yeah, I do all these meditations for bodhicitta, but, I don't really care if all, it's like, not that I don't care, but, it's just, I don't really feel the urgency to attain awakening to benefit all sentient beings. It's just contrived. This is make-believe. Make-believe, yeah, people say. But make-believe is powerful. Yeah, don't put down make-believe. When we're little kids, we dress up and we make believe to be different things. And that rehearses in our mind what it's like to become that. Okay. Video games are make-believe. It imprints in your mind certain attitudes and actions. Okay. So, imagining what it would feel like to be a bodhisattva, imagining having bodhicitta is still very, very worthwhile because that prepares the mind to actually generate it. And once in a while when we're meditating, we'll have a strong experience. It may not last forever, but it'll be really strong. Whatever strong experiences we have come about due to all the situations, all the meditation sessions when we didn't have a strong experience. Okay? Where we were just thinking about it, rehearsing about it, pretending. This goes for any kind of thing, We want to sit down and meditate and every single time have a strong experience and feel like we're getting somewhere. Yeah, anybody here have that happen? Yeah? Are many of your sessions just, well, yeah, I thought about that particular Lamrim point. It's good, and it helped me a little bit. And, because I wasn't as distracted today as I usually am. But then other days, I was just so distracted. I could barely concentrate on it. And then one day you do the same thing, and it's like, oh, wow. It's like something changes here. Yeah. That happened because of all the other sessions you did. Because if you didn't practice it and pretend and make believe and familiarize your mind with it, you would have never gotten to the point where there's some experience. Yeah. So don't think that what I'm doing is useless because I'm not, feeling anything. It's very useful.
When you have uncontrived bodhicitta, does that imply it lasts for a certain amount of time? It just maybe forever, like it never goes away? Because you mentioned these strong feelings come up in meditation, then they disappear. So what was that, uncontrived bodhicitta?
Yeah. That was probably what they call it could be just contrived bodhicitta, but a higher grade than it usually is. It could be what they call bodhicitta like sugar cane. Okay? So you aren't a bodhisattva yet, but and so you don't have the really sweet stuff in the inside of it, but it's, I should say bodhicitta like sugarcane bark. Okay. But you're eating the bark of the sugarcane. So it's sweet, but you haven't gotten to the middle of it yet. That's really good. Yeah. But you're going in that direction. So, it will last. Sometimes when you start out, it lasts, I don't know, till the end of the sessions, or it lasts, a bit beyond the session. Or it fades away, but the memory is there, like, wow, what happened to me? Yeah. But that's what we're doing is we're just adding drops to the bucket. It's still contrived. The actual bodhicitta, is much stronger, and it's not going to go away like that. We could still lose it when we're on the path, the first phase of the path of accumulation. But after that, there's no way to lose it. Okay. So you can imagine the kind of familiarity it takes to get it to that point where every time you see any sentient being, this feeling of bodhicitta arises.
I want to share a little bit about the use of imagination for me with bodhicitta.
Mm-hmm.
Is last year in that retreat that I did at Land of Calm Abiding, after a while, the practice just gets you to these places that sometimes the solitude gets to be really hard because you really are alone with yourself. So some of those days I would go up to a mountain behind where the retreat cabin was, and the Hermitage is between San Francisco and Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And there must have been at least 60 flights every day over the top of my retreat cabin. So I would sit lay down on that meadow, and I'd look up there, and I would have a relationship with the people on that plane. Mm-hmm. I would think about where could they be going? Is there happiness in their life? Are they going someplace that they dread or they're frightened of? The kindness that they are cycling in cyclic existence, doing the best they can to create the happiness, the causes of happiness. And it would totally take away any type of loneliness, any type of intense, self-focus. And it would just bring a kind of gladdening to my mind. And I would really feel like there was this karmic connection with them as they were, and there's usually the jet stream. And I'd watch that jet stream until it would evaporate, sort of seeing their mind stream, sort of like these continuities that, are about as ephemeral as that. Yeah. And it was really helpful to get the heart opened into bodhicitta. And may I be practicing now here on behalf of them for their benefit. Yeah. It's really helpful.
Very good.
A few questions online. Tukje asks, when we talk about merit being destroyed by anger, Does this mean anger that arises in the mind regardless of its result? Or is it referring to anger that becomes the cause of a negative action of body, speech, and mind?
Just anger. You don't have to act it out.
And someone else asked, how do we know when we are moving into the right direction in our effort developing the bodhicitta?
When you have less anger, less judgment, more of a wish for others to have happiness in its causes, more of a wish for them to be free of suffering in its causes. Yeah, when you're more open-minded and tolerant, more forgiving. Okay, so that's indications you're going in the right direction. If you're becoming more judgmental and more arrogant, you're going in the wrong direction. Okay. Okay, any other questions online? That's it? Okay, then we'll dedicate. So for the people online who haven't been introduced, this is Maitri. Her name means love. And she's here to teach us.